They didn't see a father, didn't see a soldier, they just saw a maintenance worker, tightening bolts on a loose bench while my son got mocked 20 feet away. I heard the laughter echo through the breezeway, but none of it was meant for me. Not that it ever was. One of the lunchaides muttered, "Some folks need to let go of the past," as I passed by in my faded overalls with my knee brace creaking. She didn't know about the ribbons boxed away at home, or the metal case tucked behind the boiler room door where I did my night shifts, unopened since the day Logan was born. But that day, when I walked past my son sitting alone with his head down and his hands wrapped around a pin torn from his bag, something inside me changed. And by the end of the week, the same hallway where they laughed would be lined with boots that didn't need introduction. If you believe no child should be shamed for honoring a parent's sacrifice, and that respect should be earned by more than titles, like and subscribe. This story deserves to be remembered. I wasn't supposed to be there that day, not at Logan's school, not during lunch, and definitely not wiping down a cracked cafeteria bench with a rust-stiff rack. I'd taken the extra hours because bills don't care about pride, and sometimes uniforms end up in closets while utility belts end up holding keys and screwdrivers instead of holsters. My name's Thomas Reed. Most folks just call me Mr. Reed now, janitor, handyman, groundskeeper, depending on who's asking. They don't know I used to train infantry squads, or that I once gave orders that shaped entire deployments. That part of me got packed away when Logan was born. I traded medals for bedtime stories and sandbags for backpacks with lunch notes. So when I found out he wanted to wear my replica commendation pins on his school bag, I told him, "You're allowed to be proud, but don't expect everyone to understand." I didn't think I'd watch the misunderstanding unfold in real time. It started the second week of school. Some older kids started calling Logan Sarge Jr., and that voice meant to sting. He didn't tell me, he just got quieter. Then one Thursday, I saw it happen. One of the kids snatched a pin off his backpack and laughed. "Maybe your dad wanted for typing fast," he said. Logan didn't even look up. Just picked it up and sat down. That was the moment I stopped tightening the bench bolt. And the moment I realized I was done staying quiet. After school, I got called in by the principal, Ms. Harper, who said Logan had been disruptive by bringing attention to himself with inappropriate attire. She used careful language, but I've heard that tone before. It's the same one officers used when they didn't want to deal with the truth. I nodded through it, thanked her for her time, then walked out. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. That night, I made one call to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. I told him, "It's not about me. It's about Logan. And it's time." He didn't ask for details. Just said, "Understood." The next day, Logan went to school like usual. But by 10 a.m., there were cars in the parking lot no one recognized. Plates from other states. Decals you don't find at a car wash. I kept my distance. I had work to do. But when the assistant principal walked into the break room pale as a ghost saying, "There's a general in the lobby asking for the assembly hall," I knew the fuse had lit. They didn't come to start trouble. They came to bear witness. 27 veterans, all ages, all backgrounds. Some in dress blues, others in work shirts with sleeves rolled high. But every one of them had one thing in common. They didn't forget what it meant to serve. And they didn't tolerate disrespect. General Owens led them down the hallway without a sound. They weren't flanked by press or signs or chants. Just presence. And presence was enough. Logan was in science class when they called him to the gym. He told me later he thought he was in trouble. Instead, he walked into a silence so heavy, even the echo of his sneakers on the floor sounded like a drumroll. The whole school was there: students, teachers, staff. No microphone. No stage lights. Just the general standing on the floor of the gym with Logan beside him and me at the back, heart in my throat. The general said one thing. "This boy carries more courage than most grown men I've met, because he stood up without raising a fist. And if you laughed, then you laughed at all of us." Then he turned to Logan and saluted. That moment, when the others followed, one by one, a wall of salutes rising around him, I saw something shift in my son's posture. He stood straighter, not because he needed to impress anyone, but because he knew he wasn't alone anymore. And when it was over, when the school clapped and the bully handed him back the pin without being asked, I finally exhaled. They never asked who I was. They never needed to. But after that day, people started nodding when I passed. The nurse who once called me maintenance now says good morning. The principal never brought up Logan's backpack again. And Logan? He still wears the pins. Only now, no one questions them. They wouldn't dare. You learn to stay quiet when you've spent most of your life listening for explosions no one else hears. That's the thing about combat. It trains your ears to notice tension long before the room catches up. And the school Logan went to? It was loud in all the wrong ways. Laughter in the halls that always dipped when he passed. The kind that sounds light to most but cuts deep when you know it's aimed at your kid. I kept showing up early and leaving late at the school grounds, fixing drains, swapping out broken soap dispensers, oiling up door hinges no one else cared about. Also, I could stay close without hovering. I never wanted Logan to feel like I was fighting his battles. But every day, I saw the dents building in his posture, like a tin roof weathering storms one insult at a time. The cafeteria jokes got worse. Military cosplay, they called his bag. One kid said, "Bet his dad's just a drunk janitor who salutes the mop bucket." Logan didn't tell me. I heard it through another custodian who heard it from the KitchenAid. My boy didn't want to burden me. That was the part that stung the most. Because once upon a time, I could take apart a field rifle blindfolded, give orders with force that moved men to charge uphill under gunfire. And now, I couldn't even protect my son from cafeteria mockery. That night, I went home and found him sitting on the floor in his room, gently polishing the pin they'd pulled off, using the sleeve of his hoodie. He didn't see me at first. I just stood in the doorway and watched, feeling something rise in my chest that I'd kept buried since my last deployment. "They don't like it," he said finally, not looking up. "They say I'm trying too hard, that you're just making stuff up." My voice caught before I could respond, so I just sat down beside him. "Do you believe them?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, but it still hurts." There was a pause. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a box he'd never seen. The real medals, not the replicas. Silver Star, Combat Infantry Badge, Airborne Wings. None of them mattered more than seeing Logan's face as he touched the glass gently, like he was brushing dust off a legacy no one else could see. I told him the story behind just one of them. The ridge in San Jin, the evac under fire, the day 3 men got home because we didn't retreat. And I told him what mattered more, that he didn't need to prove anything to anyone, that carrying quiet pride is heavier than boasting. "But what if they keep laughing?" he asked. And that's when I knew what I had to do. Not for revenge, not for spectacle, but for memory. Because silence lets the wrong people write the story. So I made 2 calls. One to General Owens, retired now, but still a man whose voice could shake a chain of command from 5 states away. He listened, didn't interrupt, and simply said, "Send me the address." The second call was to a man named Delgado. He once pulled me out of a burning Humvee and laughed while he bled. Now he runs a nonprofit for transitioning vets. He asked, "Do you want backup or presents?" I said, "Presents." The next morning, I clocked in at the school like usual, wearing my faded coveralls and wheeling a busted mop bucket like it held my whole world. No one noticed the shift in the parking lot, yet. But I did. The slow arrival of clean-cut sedans, trucks with bumper stickers that meant something. A Marine Corps insignia behind tinted glass. A Special Forces emblem on a rear windshield. A retired Navy corpsman stepping out of a hybrid with creaky knees and a steely gaze. They weren't coming for protest. They were coming for watchfulness. Eyes that don't blink. Backbones that don't break. At 10:24 a.m., Logan texted me. They tipped the pen again. I didn't reply, because at 10:25 a.m., General Owens walked through the front doors, signed in as a visitor, and calmly asked to speak with the principal. She thought it was a prank at first. Then she saw the name. She asked if he was here on district business. "I'm here on legacy business," he said. The other veterans came in small waves. Some in civilian clothes, others in their cleanest pressed uniforms. Some carried nothing. One brought a folded flag. The front desk froze. Security wasn't sure what to do. No one had ever written a protocol for dignity. Miss Harper tried to object. "This is highly irregular," she said. Owens raised an eyebrow. "So is letting a child get mocked for carrying honor." They asked for an assembly hall. She said it wasn't scheduled. He didn't need it scheduled. Within minutes, every teacher had heard the buzz. They brought their classes. You don't stop a tide with policies. At 10:40 a.m., the gym was full, and I stood in the corner, by the janitor's closet, heart pounding harder than it had in combat. Logan was called down. He walked in nervously, still clutching the pin like it was fragile. When he saw the rows of men and women lined up on the bleachers, he stopped. I saw it. The moment recognition bloomed. These weren't politicians. These were warriors. Decorated, scarred, proud. The general asked Logan to step beside him. No script. No speech. He simply turned to the room and said, "Some people think silence is humility, but sometimes silence is how injustice survives. Today, we speak for the quiet ones. For the fathers who swap rifles for lunchboxes. For the children who wear pride the world isn't ready to see. And for the legacy mocked in whispers." Then he saluted Logan. One by one, the others followed. The room went breathless. Students who'd once laughed stared, stunned. A teacher teared up. One boy, the one who tore the pin, stood up, walked down, and handed it back. "I didn't know," he said. "I'm sorry." Logan didn't gloat. He just nodded and took it. That's when the change began, not just in Logan's life, but in how people saw the quiet ones. That afternoon, the school posted a photo of the assembly with a quote from General Owens. "Honor worn in silence is still armor." Logan got invited to tell his story during Veterans Week. And Miss Harper? She didn't say much after. But the next week, she stopped me in the hallway and asked, "Why didn't you tell us who you were?" I said, "You didn't ask." She nodded slowly. "Well, thank you for teaching us anyway." That night, I went home, opened the metal case for the first time in a decade, and gave Logan the real ones. "They're yours to carry now," I told him. "Not because you've earned them, but because you understand them." And he did. He truly did. Because legacy isn't passed down in ceremonies. It's passed when a father sees his son stand, quietly, when the world tries to shrink him. And from that day on, Logan didn't just carry pins. He carried silence. The powerful kind, the kind that doesn't break when tested, the kind he learned from me. They say you never know the full weight of a moment until it echoes back through time, and that Thursday morning now lives in the halls of Logan's school like a ghost with medals on its chest. You can still hear whispers about the day the gym went silent, but few mention my name, and that's how it should be. Because it was never about me, it was about what people choose to see when they stop looking past someone. In the days that followed, everything got quieter in a new kind of way. Logan wasn't just the military kid anymore. He was the boy who stood next to a general and didn't flinch, who held a metal pin in one hand and silence in the other. Students who once mocked him started asking questions instead, real questions. One even asked if Logan could teach a history unit about the real meaning of service. Teachers nodded more often in the hallway. Cafeteria monitors watched a little longer. Miss Harper, the principal, passed me in the courtyard a few days later and said, "I underestimated him." "And you?" I nodded. Didn't gloat. Just kept walking with my bucket and toolkit, because not all victories come with banners. The superintendent called to ask if I'd consider speaking at the district leadership conference. I declined. Told them to talk to General Owens instead. He had already sent a follow-up letter to the school, printed on old VA letterhead, calling the day a moment of civic course correction. That phrase stuck. Students whispered it like legend civic course correction. Logan started writing in a small black notebook I hadn't seen before. When I asked what it was, he said, "Stuff I notice." Just like you always do. That was the first time I felt my throat tighten since my last deployment. A week after the assembly, something unexpected happened. A black SUV pulled up beside the school gate, not flashy, not aggressive, just purposeful. Out stepped a woman in a tailored navy coat and polished shoes. Her name was Major Sarah Patel, Army Reserve, working under the Department of Education's Veteran Family Liaison Program. She'd heard about what happened, wanted to meet Logan, wanted to meet me. Said there was talk of establishing a recognition initiative for schools, educating students about veteran families, children of service members, the quiet homes behind the folded flags. "We'll call it the Logan Project, if you don't mind," she said. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at my son, who was standing a few feet away in his worn hoodie, the metal pinned back in its rightful place. "Only if he leads it," I said. And he did. Over the next few weeks, Logan spoke in classrooms, not just his own. He didn't preach. He told stories. About bedtime tales that started with back when my dad wore a name tag that said U.S. Army. About the time we got snowed in during a holiday and roasted canned chili on a garage heater while we laughed like kings. About what it feels like to carry pride no one claps for. And slowly, something shifted in the school. The kid who used to sit alone was now being asked to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. He even helped organize a day of quiet, across campus, no phones, no music, just students walking in silence around the field in memory of lives sacrificed. That idea didn't come from me. It came from him. And during that walk, I stood by the flagpole, unseen as usual, and watched a generation pause for something bigger than themselves. Then came the phone call from the state capitol. A staffer for the governor's office had read the story. They wanted to invite Logan to receive a youth civic leadership honor. When I told him, he looked confused. "But I didn't do anything special," he said. And I smiled. Exactly. Because that's what we were always trying to teach. That legacy doesn't scream. It endures. The day of the ceremony, Logan wore the same hoodie with the patch sewn on from the pin that started it all. He refused to wear a suit. Said, "I want them to see what they missed the first time." When they called his name, the crowd rose. Not in applause, but in recognition. Like they were standing not just for him, but for all the kids with quiet parents and quiet stories the world almost erased. The governor handed him the plaque. Logan held it for just a second before stepping up to the mic. He didn't read from notes. He looked out at the room, polished, powerful, expectant, and said, "I used to think silence was weakness. That if you didn't speak up, you got forgotten. But I learned that silence can be strength too, if you use it right." There wasn't a dry eye by the time he finished. On the drive home, he looked out the window for most of the ride. "You think I made you proud?" he asked. I pulled the truck over. Looked him square in the eyes. "Kid, you didn't make me proud. You made me whole." He didn't reply. Just nodded slowly, the way men do when words feel too small. Back home, I finally opened the old footlocker under my bed. Took out a folded letter I'd never shown anyone, one written to me years ago by a sergeant I'd led through one of the worst nights of our deployment. In it, he wrote, "I'm still alive because you taught us how to stand even when we wanted to kneel." I handed it to Logan. "This is for you now," I said. "Not because you're a soldier, but because you stood." That night, we sat on the porch in silence. Just the two of us. No flags waving, no crowd watching. And as the sun dipped low, painting the street in golden quiet, I realized something. My son had done something no medal ever could. He took a broken thing, mockery, dismissal, silence, and built something out of it. Respect, resilience, legacy, and all of it without shouting. Just like I hoped he would. Just like I prayed he would. And in that moment, watching him stare into the horizon like he could already see the future walking toward him, I knew the story would never need my name. Just his.